anticipated litigation and took no reportable action. That concludes, and the council adjourned at 6:50 p.m. Thank you.
Thank you, and bless you. Our next item is a special presentation. These are the kinds of special presentations I like because all I do is introduce it and pass it on to Councilmember Andrews. So Councilmember Andrews,
yes.
Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm excited to announce the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Beautiful Yard Contest Certificate of Recognition presentation. I want to acknowledge all the task force members here. If you all can stand so everyone can see you. We have Melissa Millens, Sergey Milagnov, and then Doug Mansell, Tom Pereira, and George is here as well. Are there any other task force members here? Great. All right, so we wanted to pass it off to you to do your brief PowerPoint presentation, and then we'll start handing out awards to our lucky winners.
Is this on? Okay. Well, I want to thank the Mayor, Mark Salinas, and City Council for having us here tonight. I appreciate all your support over the years for our task force. We're doing great work for the city and continue to do great work with the community members. So I also want to thank our members here tonight, task force members here tonight and watching on television. They're all fantastic and I appreciate every one of them. And I'm very proud of our winners that we had quite a few contestants this year, so it was hard to choose, but we were able to come up with the top 3. So very proud of that, and the community members doing their part to keep our city clean and keeping their front yards very nice for all of us. So I appreciate them being here tonight. I'm going to pass it off to our Chair-elect, Melissa Millman, and she has a slide presentation she wants to share with us. Thank you, guys.
Hi, council members. I also would like to say thank you so much for supporting Keep Hayward Clean and Green Beautiful Yard contest over the years. Yeah, very excited to be giving our awards out tonight to our winners. Congratulations. And so now I will explain how the Beautiful Yard Contest works. The Hayward Beautiful Yard Contest is a reward-based approach to encourage residents to keep Hayward clean, green, and beautiful by acknowledging the hard work that goes into a bay-friendly yard. The contest criteria that we look for is obviously a yard clean and free of debris, well-maintained foliage, plants that reduce water usage, and use of native plants in landscaping. And we are trying to kind of focus on that one more and more because native plants also support our pollinators, which support other plants plants growing and food production, all sorts of good environmental benefits to planting native. Let's see. Oh, whoops. Was that it? Oh, I thought we had more slides. Apparently not. Okay, so actually, this is going to be a little quicker than expected. So now I'm quickly, yeah. I am quickly passing this over to the exciting part, giving out the winners. Sergey Melnikov is going to take over, and he has worked hard all year to keep this competition organized for us. So thank you so much. Sergey.
Thank you, Chair-elected, and thank you to you guys. I know, like, George just tried to tease me, say, you come again. Yeah, but this time I came to give it to somebody, not to take it. So, and, oh, sorry. So we start with Sword Place. It's Jimmy Mejia, and it's Sword Place. It's a really great place, located in Hayward Hills. Second place is Mary Jane. And the winner is Monica Gloria and Jesus, of course. I will,
So we'll come down and hand out the gift certificates. All 3 winners have received a gift certificate for Together for Hayward. So these are Hayward businesses that have signed up for the gift card program. So the third place winner received $75. The second place winner received $150. And then the first place winner, Monica Gloria, received $200. So, yes. Congratulations. We'll all come down. And I just wanted to acknowledge that Sergey won last year, or the year before, 2 years ago. So we have a winner that was actually converted to a task force member. So you can do that too, if you would like to. Yes, yes.
you're always welcome. It's like, first step, first place, and join us.
Okay, so want to come down? All right, thank you.
Yeah, and Councilmember Angela is. I'm not actually. Yeah, but she's, I'm sorry, you're not council. Yeah, she lives in my neighborhood as well, so. Thank you very much. You guys are holding out. Yeah, there we go. That's lovely.
That is amazing. Here you go.
Yay. Thank you. Let's look there first.
Okay, which one?
We're looking at Melissa. Or
Okay, thank you. And, I know there's just a few in the room, but let's give the Gomez? No, who was it? No, Garcia? No, who is it? Monica, let's give Monica Gloria a big round of applause, although she's not here. I mean, she left the room. I had a feeling that the director of development services would be game to give a good round of applause. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Next is public comment. This is reserved for anybody in the audience or online that would like to make a public comment on something that is on the agenda or not on the agenda. Let's see, is there anybody? I don't see any cards submitted, and there's nobody online that would like to make a public comment, so I will close public comment, and then I'll move on to the city manager's comments. Mr. City Manager.
Great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I come with good and bad news, and it's all one piece of news. The bad news first. The Weeks Branch Library is closed. It will be closed until March. The good news is that is because there are additions being made and it's being reconstructed. Very excited for that. Those updates are long overdue, and I'm sure will be well received by the community. Want to make sure that folks still have access to all of the same things and more at our downtown library. We have AV equipment that can be rented, meeting rooms that can be used, and a lot more. So I just wanted to pass that along to the community. The closure began during the week of Thanksgiving and will last into March. So hopefully folks can make the trek downtown to have their library needs met. So that's all for this evening.
Great, thank you. Mr. I have a new pair of glasses. Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that update. Are we going to be able to have Kirby go out there during this interim period, so at least they have some access to?
Absolutely.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I did see there is a calendar published online, and I believe the South Hayward area was included in that, if I'm not mistaken. I think so. So, yeah, thank you. Councilmember Zermeño, yeah.
Thank you for the report. Any news on what we can do to help the folks who are gathered around the library?
As far as?
Helping them to facilities, sending heart out to them, making sure that we contact them. What do you need? How can we help you, et cetera? There are about a good number of folks there.
Certainly. Staff will continue to do outreach to that area and work with our partners at South Hayward Parish as well.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, seeing nothing else, I'd like to close City Manager's announcements and reports. Move on to consent calendar. I have been asked to pull item number 2 just for comment. Before I move on, is there anybody else that would like to make a comment on anything else? Seeing none, I'm looking at Councilmember Syrup because I know he always has something to pull or something.
Oh, thank you. 3.
Okay, item number 3.
Just a comment. But
Okay,
I'm happy to move the remaining items.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me call upon Councilmember Andrews first. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to give kudos to Leah Martinez, who served on our task force, Keep Hayward Clean and Green task force. She actually initiated the senior yard contest, so I wanted to thank her so much for her services. And she really has done a lot with the commission, has brought a lot of energy, and we're going to miss her presence there and hope she does great things moving forward. But thank you, Leah Martinez.
Thank you, Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. I wanted to thank Councilmember Andrews for reminding me of this item, and also thank Commissioner Edwards, who is stepping down from the Personnel Commission. Commissioner Edwards, alongside a few commissioners that have stepped down recently in the past few months, helped see the Personnel Commission through a transition. Yeah. We hosted a retreat at the library to really rethink how this commission could provide value to both residents and the city. So I believe the commission is in a better place because of Commissioner Edwards' contributions. I'm a little sad that she won't be able to see them through, but just wanted to thank her for all of her work and energy she put into the commission to get us to where it is today, and I look forward to seeing what it becomes because of her contributions. And I also just want to flag, we've had a high degree of turnover for the Personnel Commission, which means we have a number of vacancies. So if folks are interested in how the city functions as an organization, I encourage you to apply for the Personnel Commission to learn more about that and also to contribute your feedback on how we could govern better and serve the city better. Thank you.
Thank you. And as somebody who has been on the Personnel Commission for many years, and I know Councilmember Syra sort of took my place on the Personnel Commission, I appreciate that. And thank you for your service on the Personnel Commission. So I believe there are no other questions, and moved by Councilmember Andrews, and I believe that was seconded by Councilmember Syra.
Yep.
And Madam City Clerk, should we practice the vote? Should we practice voting now, or should we, if there's no objection, we can just unanimously pass it?
Correct. Yes.
So if there are no objections, this item, the consent calendar items 1 through 11 will pass unanimously. Thank you.
And Mayor, just for the record, and no public speakers on the consent calendar.
Thank you very much for that. Okay, so just for point of clarification, it's consent calendar items 1 through 11, correct? Okay. All right. Thank you. Moving on to our work session, our first item is recommended fiscal year 2026 to fiscal year 2030 sewer rates and connection fees. And I believe our Public Works Director, Alex Ameri, will kick this off. And I was told that he has not 5 slides, but I hear it's 7 slides.
That's correct, sir. 5 plus 7, yes. Thank you and good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My team and I are pleased to be here this evening to present the results of the study related to setting the new sewer rates and sewer connection fees. The resulting rates have been heavily impacted by the 800-pound gorilla in the room, which is the San Francisco Water Board's recent adoption of a new watershed permit requiring wastewater agencies to design and construct improvements to reduce the amount of nutrients in the treated wastewater. As you will hear shortly, the resulting project for Hayward is by far the most expensive project in the history of the city. I now turn this over to Nancy Fan with Water Resources Economics and Trang Nguyen, Management Analyst with Public Works and Utilities, to present the item. Nancy?
Thank you, Alex, and good evening, everyone, and City Council. My name is Nancy Fan, and I'm a principal consultant with Water Resources Economics, and we're a consulting firm that specializes in utility rate setting in California. And today's agenda starts with an overview of the sewer rate study, a discussion of the financial plan, and a look at the proposed sewer rates and connection fees. And then we'll finish off with the schedule of the remaining portions of the process of this rate study, and then open the floor up for some discussion. So from here, I'm going to hand it over to Trang to start us off.
Thank you, Nancy, and good evening, everyone. Now I will give a brief overview of the sewer rate. As you can see here, the sewer rates pay for the collection, treatment, and disposal of wastewater. Under residential, Hayward offers 3 tiers, and for customers consuming less water, they will automatically pay less for sewer under the economy and lifeline rates. For non-residential customers, their rate is based on the water consumption and the strength of their wastewater. There are 3 main financial drivers that affect sewer rate. First is the operating and maintenance costs. The second is the capital replacement fund. And here I want to highlight that under state regulations, Hayward's water resource recovery facility is required to reduce nutrients discharged into the bay by 53% by 2034. In response to this requirement, staff is designing the WRF Phase 2 improvement project, which is estimated to cost approximately $488 million. And lastly, we want to make sure there is a healthy reserve, so funds are readily available to continue operations if emergencies occur. Now I will turn it back to Nancy.
Great, thank you so much, Trang. So first I'm going to cover Prop 218 requirements. This is something that utility rates in California fall under. It's an initiative that was approved by voters back in 1996. And the most important requirement in Proposition 218 is that the sewer rates charged to customers cannot exceed the cost to provide sewer service to that customer. And the link between the rates charged to the customers and the costs that are incurred by the utility is called what we call a nexus. And so what this means is that one customer class cannot subsidize another class under Prop 218. So all customers have to pay their fair share of the costs when using the sewer system. And then on the flip side, the city cannot generate more revenue than is needed to run the system. And the process of determining what we call this nexus is a cost of service analysis. So typically we recommend that agencies conduct one at least once every 5 years or so, or when there are significant changes to the system to make sure that we're maintaining that sufficient nexus. And for this study, the city's upcoming investment into the water WRF project constitutes a significant change to the sewer systems and its costs. First, we're going to go over the financial plan. I know there's a lot of graphs showing on the screen, and I will go over each one by one. The financial plan, first of all, looks at the revenues and costs over this multi-year period from fiscal year 2026 to fiscal year 2030. And we need it to determine how much additional sewer rate revenue we need to fund costs and to meet the city's financial targets. So this slide here, we're showing the status quo or the do-nothing scenario. This means that this is the scenario we're looking at when there are no increases to the sewer rate revenues at all. So the first financial target we're going to look at is debt coverage, which is shown in the leftmost graph. The city is planning on issuing over $450 million in debt over the next 5 years. So we really need to make sure that we're meeting the debt coverage requirement of 110%. I'm highlighting that in the dashed line in the leftmost graph. The blue line here shows the calculated debt coverage for the status quo or the do-nothing scenario is under the target starting in fiscal year 2029, which means that the city will be in technical default. The second financial target that we look at is the fund balance, which is shown in this rightmost graph here with the green bars. The city's reserve policy includes certain funds to meet unexpected operating costs, deal with emergencies and natural disasters should they arise, and to fund capital projects. The target is represented by the dashed line here and averages approximately $34 million in reserved funds. And if the city doesn't increase its sewer rate revenues, which is what this financial plan scenario is showing, not only will it not meet its fund balance targets, but the sewer fund will go negative starting in fiscal year 2029 with no increases. And so what the status quo financial plan shows us is why we need to increase sewer revenues. And that's to meet debt coverage and to meet the fund balance targets here. So this next slide is the proposed scenario where we solve the financial plan. And the first adjustment we make is to the sewer rate revenue requirement. This scenario shows 12%, you see right here, 12% increase in total sewer rate revenues each year from fiscal year 2026 to fiscal year 2030. So note that for fiscal year 2026, the revenue adjustment, which is 12%, that is not the same as the rate increase due to the results of the cost of service analysis that I mentioned previously. The second adjustment we make is to the CIP or capital execution rate, which represents the actual capital spending compared to what the CIP planned expenditures are. This scenario shows that the city will execute 95% of its planned CIP each year, which is more in line with what the city can reasonably complete each year. Typically, utilities don't have an execution rate of 100% due to scheduling delays or other issues that would reduce its execution. And when we adjust the sewer rate revenues up by 12% and the CIP execution rate to 95% in the proposed scenario, we can see that the city can now meet its debt coverage in all years here and fund its have sufficient fund balances to meet its reserve targets right here. Okay, so after we conduct a cost of service analysis and then finally determine the proposed sewer rates, We then are analyzing the impact to customers. This slide shows the single-family customers, which are charged the standard residential rate, and these customers make up the largest customer group in the city. The current rate is $44.19 per month, and the proposed rate starting in July 2025 is $47.83 per month, which means that there is a $3.64 increase to the monthly sewer bill for a single-family customer. And when we compare the city's monthly sewer bills with those of nearby agencies, which we can see in that top graph, the city is towards the middle of the pack. But when we compare the city to nearby agencies with a planned project for nutrient removal, which is what the city is investing in with the WRRF Phase 2 improvement project, we can see that the Hayward single-family sewer bill is actually on the lower end of these agencies. And additionally, Hayward is the only agency that charges a lower sewer rate to residential customers that use less water, and those are the economy and lifeline rates, which are going to be lower than the standard residential rates that we see on this slide. Okay, as part of the study as well, we also updated the city's sewer connection fees. And connection fees are one-time charges that are collected when new development connects to the city's sewer system. And the reason why we charge these fees is to ensure that growth pays for growth. And this is a concept that recognizes the fact that the city's current customers have paid into the current sewer system, while new customers connecting to the system haven't. And connection fees are charged so that new customers who, when they connect, can now benefit from the sewer system, but have not yet paid into it, are on equal financial footing as the city's existing customers. And so these connection fees include costs for the remaining capacity in the existing sewer system, which has been paid for by existing customers, and the expanded capacity in the future sewer system. And these costs include the city's investment into capital projects that expand the system, such as a portion of the WRF Phase 2 improvement project. And based on our analysis of the cost of the sewer system's capacity, we determined that the sewer connection fees need to increase by approximately 22% from the current sewer connection fees. However, staff is recommending implementing 2 years of 10% increases to the connection fee, which you can see on the last 2 columns here, to smooth out the impacts to new customers. And this slide shows the comparison of the sewer connection fees per equivalent dwelling unit, or EDU, which is effectively one single-family residence. In the top, we can see the comparison for nearby agencies. The bottom, we can see the comparison for agencies with nutrient removal projects. And Hayward's proposed sewer connection fees are comparable to that of most nearby agencies. So from here, I'm going to hand it back to Trang, and we'll finish up the presentation. Thank you.
Here's the schedule for our rate adoption process. We would like to receive comments and concurrence with the proposed rates from Council today. Notices of the proposed rates will be mailed out by Friday, December 20th to all residents and property owners in Hayward. By law, we are only required to notify property owners. However, Hayward will be sending notices to tenants as well to be open and transparent. Connection fees is not subject to the same 45-day notice requirement, but staff will notify any applicants who may be impacted. We will return to Council on February 4th for the public hearing and adoption of rates. If approved by Council, the sewer rates will be effective annually from July 1st, 2025 to July 1st, 2029, and connection fees will be effective September 1st, 2025 and September 1st, 2026. This concludes the presentation, and now I will turn it back to Alex.
Thank you, Trank. Mr. Mayor, council members, just wanted to mention that this evening with us is Christian Spronger with NHA, the city's financial advisor, to assist in responding to questions. With that, thank you, and we are here to respond.
Thank you. I'm looking at my iPad here, and it doesn't show the queue, so I'm just gonna go. I think I saw Councilmember Bonilla go first, and then Councilmember Andrews, Councilmember Roach, and then Councilmember Zemenu. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for this detailed report. You know, of course, anytime we're increasing fees in our city, it's always a hard discussion to have, especially considering how many things are competing for all of our residents' money and how expensive it is to live in the Bay Area. But we also recognize it's important to conduct these nutrient removal projects so that, you know, we're in compliance and that we also have strong sewer and utility infrastructure. The questions that I did have, though, is so on slide, it was up top, the financial plan, the proposed, where it says 12%. That's 12% increases year over year consistently over a 5-year period. So it's like a compounded 12% every year, right?
12% every year in revenue requirement. Not every customer pays or is charged 12%. Like, for instance, residential customers in the first year, their increase is going to be less than 12%. But there are some large businesses that may be paying a little bit more, not much, but a little bit more than 12%, so that the revenue overall is going to show an increase of 12% a year.
I see. Okay. My next question is, I know that we were trying to maintain about a $34 million reserve in our, in these utility funds. Would we ever consider sort of reducing that reserve so that, we don't have to increase the rates so high to kind of offset some of these rate increases, especially for some of our lower income residents within the city?
So there are a couple of reasons for the reserves. One, of course, is the council policy that we are required to have a certain amount of reserve. And the other is that we need to have enough in our reserves to have the debt service coverage. We are borrowing close to $450 million. And there is a requirement that we have something in our reserves to cover for emergencies.
So I guess what happens to a resident that's on a fixed income that may not be able to afford these? I guess that's what I'm wondering
That is a great question. And let me explain, please. The charts that you see that shows the city of Hayward residential rates compared to other agencies is a little bit incomplete in that about 50% of our residents enjoy a much lower rate, either half as much as the existing rate or even less, like a quarter or close to that of that. If I take the weighted average of those rates, our rate is going to be in the neighborhood of $35 per month. So our rates are extremely competitive to other agencies, and those who don't use a lot of water, they pay even less. Like for what we call Lifeline, is going to be in the neighborhood of $12 a month. For economy, is going to be in the neighborhood of $22 a month.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I'd also jump in and add, we do offer assistance for folks who are having trouble paying their utility bills. As long as they qualify, the city will offer a reduction in the.
Yeah, because I just, it reminds me of sometimes, we get those lists that we approve that has everyone's name listed and how much debt they owe because they weren't able to make their, bills. And I'm just wondering if that list is going to now increase and what we can do to help, remedy that for some of our lowest income residents in Hayward.
Just a comment on that, the total revenue in the sewer enterprise is about $30 million. And the list that comes before you for the sewer delinquencies is less than $100,000. It's a very, very small amount compared to the total revenue. The much larger number is related to waste management, that their number is in the neighborhood of like $400,000.
Makes sense. And then for the proposed connection fees, I know the recommendation was 22% and we're looking at 10% over 2 years. Would it kind of make this not pencil if we looked at maybe extending that for a third year and smoothing it even further?
We could look into that. If you give us that direction, we are going to look into it and calculate it.
Just something to consider. I would wonder how those numbers would sort of pencil.
Absolutely.
I would caution only that if we, part of the calculus here is that we do this in the timeline that we're doing it, and that means that we'll end with a 22% adjustment, near there. If we push it out further, that 22% could climb to 23, 24, 25. So, I'm not suggesting that that's impossible to do, but it could have a longer term impact.
Got it. And then in these comparison charts, is this the comparison for a single year increase, or is this where we're going to land after we do the 5 years of consecutive increases?
It's for the first year,
First
which
year.
is the number that we have. And many of those other numbers that you see, it says current under it, meaning that they have not gone through the process that we are going through right now to adjust their fees. When, Union Sanitary District just to our south, serving Union City, Fremont, and what have you, they are spending $500 million, just like Hayward, on their plant improvements. They haven't done their connection fee calculations. I expect it to go up similarly to ours.
Got it. Because when I'm looking at the connection fee comparisons, for an example, for the nutrient removal districts, if you will, with next year's increase, it's going to put us as kind of we're going to have the most expensive fees, and then year over year that will just continue to increase. So we're kind of sort of stay there, right? So I guess when you're looking at some of these other comparisons, like if you look at the single family bill comparisons, where we have Hayward kind of fourth in the proposed, it could actually be even higher once this is compounded over the 5 years, right? So I mean, we could end up as the second or first highest cost city when it comes to this.
What we can bring to you is after they have adjusted their rates
that would be
later this
helpful.
year, theirs is going to be as high or higher.
Oh, okay, that would be helpful. And then my very last question is, why are our connection fee comparisons for the sewer connection, the proposal is going to kind of make us the highest out of these agencies or other cities that we're comparing to? Why is that?
So the philosophy is, do we want our residential customers that pay their sewer rates subsidizing a business, let's say an industrial laundry or something, that comes to Hayward, uses Hayward water resources and other things to subsidize them? This study that is before you doesn't have a subsidy from residential customers to those business customers. In some other agencies, maybe there are some, interconnections there.
And that wouldn't conflict with the 218 requirement?
It shouldn't be like that, correct.
Oh, I see. All right. Thank you. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you very much. Thanks,
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to look at San Leandro's sewer connection fee versus our current, and is it because they don't have any nutrient removal projects, and that's why it's
None, zero.
zero?
They have not started anything, and they have the same requirements as we do. They have the same timeline of by 2034, they need to reduce their nutrients by 53%. They are a year or so behind us, and they are going to have to start soon.
So those differences will change. Okay.
Absolutely,
Okay.
yes.
And then wanted to see a lot of the charts were all single family, and wanted to see if there was any charts related to commercial.
We
or-
have some things related to commercial. And
Did I-
Nancy, we wanted to reduce the number of slides.
Okay.
Can you bring that up, Nancy, and talk about it?
Sure.
Thank
So
you.
we have on this slide here the proposed commercial sewer rates for coded commercial customers that have a separate irrigation meter. The next slide has coded commercial customers without a separate irrigation meter.
So I
and-
actually mean in comparison to other jurisdictions. Did we have
Oh,
any?
We do not have a comparison to other jurisdictions in this presentation available.
Okay.
We can get that for you. But please note, for instance, that that's a good example, that for restaurants, the increase is de minimis. It goes from $10.44 to $10.53. So when, when we apportion everything, it comes out that some pay less than 12% or 10%, some a little bit more.
Yes, the reason why I'm asking is because that's pretty much the number one reason why a restaurant will call me is because of the connection fees, the rates, or whatever it is. And so just want to see if what other jurisdictions are doing to attract.
We can provide that information to you.
Okay. And are there any programs to help support, similar to what we have for residents? Are there programs to support those businesses?
I would defer to city manager. I'm not aware of any program in the wastewater enterprise to do that.
Okay, got it. All right, and then what is the results of some of the legislation that is still kind of stalling regarding PFAS and the impact to the rates that are being studied now?
They are studying that, but no decisions have been made. The more important, if you will, side is in the drinking water, whether PFAS is present. We do not have PFAS in our drinking water. Unlike some other agencies, some neighboring agencies that use well water, we do not have that. So even in our wastewater, the only PFAS that shows up is related to household items and clothing, washing them, and there is something which basically ends up in the biosolids, in the sludge, that if there is excess of PFAS in the sludge, then disposing it becomes an issue. But the regulations have not been finalized yet.
So we will have to come back and look at these rates when PFAS, more studies come in the legislation is
Again, the
reviewed.
amount of PFAS is very, very small in our wastewater because our drinking water doesn't have any PFAS. But if there is legislation that regulates that, yes. And I have to say, even about the nutrients, this may not be the end of it. Like 10 years from now, they might say that a 53% reduction is not enough. You need to go to 80%. But right now, this is what we have, and we have been given assurances that this regulations is going to stay the same for the next 10 years.
And I know that I know there's some advocacy with the state because of this requirement. Wanted to see what the latest. I know at East Bay Discharges Authority, we talk about some of the advocacy for these costs that are impacting jurisdictions. What's the latest and greatest in terms of those consortiums that are trying to advocate for funding to reduce some of these costs to the ratepayer?
So advocacy so far has been with the San Francisco Water Board, and they are not very sensitive to those advocacies. I didn't like when we said that this is a huge cost, and the response was that the cost of not doing anything is going to be even more, regardless of the fact that our ratepayers here are paying these huge costs all of a sudden now, beginning next year.
And one of your questions, Councilmember Andrews, made a thought pop into my head, and I want to make it clear, and I know you know this, but I'm not sure everyone in the community does. These changes that are being thrust upon us are not because of any action or inaction that the city has taken.
Right.
It is something that is being forced upon us.
Statewide.
And everyone in the state that goes to a body of water similar to the Bay will be dealing with this. And it's unfortunate because it has to be paid for. Hopefully it does make a significant difference in climate change and in keeping our waters clean.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Julie Andrews is next.
Thank you. Thanks. My colleagues, I think, asked a lot of the questions I was interested in. I was glad to hear about the low-income customers are paying significantly less already. So I think we're already considering that. But I did want to ask, right, so just to be clear, so the San Francisco Water Board passed this requirement that we have to remove nutrients in our water, and everyone is having to deal with this. So we're all trying to figure out a way to pay for it, is right?
All of the dischargers, more than 30 of them around the bay that discharge to San Francisco Bay are subject to the same regulations under the recently adopted watershed permit, third watershed permit.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure the public hears that this, we're not trying to do this to increase revenue. We're trying to pay back, debt rate for a requirement that we have to do. But I was wondering, I mean, at the cost of $488 million, I mean, it sounds like the San Francisco Water Board isn't that sympathetic about this, but I assume there's some jurisdictions that can't even borrow that much money. I mean, how are other jurisdictions dealing with this?
That's a great question. I'm not sure what they are going to be doing. I would just add that, our plan was to borrow half of this money, which is the limit for borrowing from the federal government, to borrow from federal government, and the other half from the low interest state funding, state revolving fund. When we contacted them, they said, unfortunately, the money has run out this year, and there is not going to be additional SRF fund for the next few years. You check with us again in a few years. So now we have to go to private bond financing and pay an interest rate maybe around 4%, which is much higher than SRF rate. So that is in addition to the fact that we are borrowing. Now we have to pay a higher interest rate too.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, and I mean, I'm not even necessarily like having an issue with it because, I think to the city manager's point that, this is something that's going to be good for the environment, good for the Bay. But obviously it's hard. We all have to, assume this responsibility, including all of our residents. I wanted to ask about, sorry, I had another question around the same amount about the borrowing and the amount. But I can't, I think it lost. Yeah, I mean, I guess I just wanted to be clear to the public that this is something, we're trying to do to find a way forward with this requirement, understanding that it will benefit the community and our health and the Bay. So, that was the question I had about the connection fees. Are connections fees just one time, like when a house is built and they want to get that house attached? So it's just so it's not like when a new tenant moves into the house, they have to pay. It's just when it's being built. So you have a whole new housing development, everyone's paying the one-time fee, and then forever after, any new people that buy that. Or Bonilla's point about sort of like taking time to absorb the fee. I guess I can see, 2 years is really just a planning issue, right? It's like if you're planning a new house and you have to build in the fees that go to that house, then 1 year gives them enough, 2 years maybe, but I guess it's not that like there's an individual customer that needs to absorb that fee over time, like because they're going to pay it one time. That's what I'm saying. So,
correct.
Okay, so I'm okay then with the 2 years because, understanding that it just gives planning, people who are planning to build a sense of what to expect within a couple of year period. Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember Cermeño.
A good presentation, Alex, as always. So this is set up till 2029. Do we foresee any changes up or down? And if so, what you would come back and let us know?
So if you are okay with what we are presenting tonight, we are going to develop our Prop 218 notice based on these increases.
Okay.
The 12% is going to be the maximum amount.
Okay.
Maybe the actual amount after we refine the calculation be a little bit less than that. But for the next 5 years is going to be year one, whatever the calculation shows, and then up to 12% a year for the next 4 years.
All right.
And then 5 years from now, we are going to come back before you again with a new cost of service study and ask for adjustment at that time.
So it's a 5-year plan, and sometimes there are changes in between, but
Not
seldom.
in the first 5 years.
Okay, very
Yes.
good. Now, in comparing ourselves to other cities, we seem to be right in the middle,
Right.
except for the one on sewer connection fees. Are you comfortable with us being at the top, the most expensive? And the other ones, we're in the middle.
I'm comfortable with our residential customers and some of the other customers not subsidizing large industrial dischargers that have to pay their connection fees.
Okay, all right. I do agree with the notion that we need to recover our fees or our cost equitably, so thank you. Thank you very much. Keep up the good work.
Councilmember Goldstein.
Thank you. Great report. You've answered all my questions, so just a comment about this. I'm actually kind of stunned that such a large number expenditure can be covered by what appear to be actually fairly small amounts of increase. And I say that at the at the jeopardy of being accused of being insensitive. I'm not insensitive to it. It's just that the requirement that we have to go through, and we're not alone with this, that everyone has to go through this. And so what I'm really trying to say here is to give credit where credit is due, and that is something that we have to do. And the way that you've outlined this, I think, is very fair and equitable. And so, good work.
Thank you, sir.
Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Director Mary, for this report. This has gone through, I believe, the Council Infrastructure Committee and the Council Budget Committee as well. And so I know that your staff has taken a lot of time and thought in preparing this and working it through the appropriate channels before it got here tonight. And I think you've heard from the questions and we've heard from the answers that staff has given immense consideration to making sure that the impact on residents is minimal, as much as we would prefer for there to be no impact at all. Some of these things are out of our control given the cost of this massive project for our city. I was curious, I'm supportive overall of this direction, so let me just be clear in my direction, but I am curious, just kind of going off of Councilmember Bonilla's question, what is the lowest our reserves could be while still maintaining that debt service? Right now I'm seeing 34 million on the slide as something we're trying to maintain. Maybe I'm getting that number off by a couple of million, but what is the lowest that we could stomach as a city?
I would say generally 1 year of our revenue, but I would also defer to Mr. Spranger if he's online, or Nancy Fan to respond. Christian, are you online?
Yes. Good evening, members of the council, public, city staff. Christian Sprunger with NHA Advisors. We're the city's municipal financial advisor. So there's a few considerations when it comes to the amount of reserves you should maintain when you're going to the market for a large project like this. One of the primary considerations is just the optimal levels of reserves for credit rating purposes. So the credit rating agencies are looking at the reserve levels that you're maintaining, and they want to make sure that that the city has the reserves to withstand a unforeseen increase in expenditures one time, or an unforeseen dip in revenues for some reason. And so generally speaking, 1 year of operations is a very good target to aim for.
Got it, thank you. So I guess my follow-up would be just to mitigate the impact on residents. I'm wondering how much we would be able to safely lower that specific reserve to minimize impact on residents. And of course, we could always revisit increasing it in the future once some of these changes have been made. But I'm just trying to see if there's any way we can shoulder more of the burden on residents. And if it's ill-advised, I understand that too. I'm just trying to understand what our margin of wiggle room is here.
I understand. And if you allow us, we are going to look into that between now and when we have to publish Prop 218. Our rates are not going to go any higher than we are talking this evening. But if there is room to adjust it slightly lower, we will do that before we publish Prop 218.
Got it. Okay. Thank you very much for your work on this.
Thank you. Okay, Director Mary, do you have what you need?
I do. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Great. It seems like there's a consensus of the direction that we need to go. So
wonderful. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Okay.
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
Just for the record, so no public speakers on
That's
this
right.
item. Yes.
Of course, there is no public comment, neither online or in person. Yes. So I'd like to close work session and move on to public hearing, where we will have public comment, both online and in person. Public hearing is Tenant Relocation Assistance Program, introduction of an ordinance amending Chapter 12, Article 2 of the Hayward Municipal Code, simplifying requirements for relocation assistance, adopt a resolution amending fiscal year 2025 master fee schedule, and adopt a resolution appropriating revenue funds received from landlords reimbursing the city for relocation assistance cases. And I believe this is going to come to us by way of our Development Services Manager, Director Bowser, Sarah Bowser.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. It's a pleasure to be here. I am going to quickly turn this over to Management Analyst Ayush Patel from our Housing Division, who is going to present the item tonight. So with that, turn it over.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So as Sarah mentioned, today will be the public hearing for the Tenant Relocation Assistance Ordinance, where we'll be simplifying the requirements for the ordinance. And this is Chapter 12, Article 2 of the Municipal Code. So just to give a little bit of a brief background on the Tenant Relocation Assistance Ordinance, or TRAO for short, it was adopted in July of 2020 to ensure that residents had the same protections that were afforded under state law. And there are three core components of the TRAO. The first is permanent relocation assistance, which is really applied when there's no-fault terminations. There are temporary relocation assistance, which is for substantial repairs, in which a landlord needs to make repairs to a rental unit and the tenant needs to vacate the unit. And then the third is for governmental agencies ordered to vacate. So this is really applied when there's health and safety conditions that occur in the rental unit, and a governmental agency such as code enforcement will need to provide a notice to vacate. Unfortunately, the requirements of the TRAO have layers of complexities, so this has really made the ordinance difficult for stakeholders to understand and even for staff to administer. So one of the ways that the council has actually decided to address this concern was adding a simplification of the TRAO on the strategic roadmap for fiscal year 25. And staff has actually presented the proposed changes to the HPRC in September, which largely supported the recommended revisions to the ordinance. So one of the first things that we're looking at for changing includes simplifying the payment structure. Right now, we have a pretty complex per diem payment structure with multiple variables, such as meal expenses, hotel costs, and number of tenants, to really changing to a flat rate based on the fair market rent for Alameda County. So this flat rate would be a one-time payment, and it would really, what we're proposing is if the displacement occurs for 30 days or more, it would be a one-time flat rate payment of 3 times the FMR. And if the displacement occurs for fewer than 30 days, it would be prorated to the number of days. So on the left side of the column where you see the per diem, that's based on the current structure of variables that account for the per diem. And then in the middle column is the 3 times the FMR, which is what is proposed. And then on the right is the proposed flat rate, which is prorated for the 3 times FMR. So we also suggested changing that because the proposed flat rate provides enough money to find alternative permanent housing, we recommend stating that the permanent relocation assistance is no longer required when providing this temporary relocation assistance. Additionally, I wanted to point out that in lieu of providing a temporary relocation payment, landlords may offer tenants with a comparable rental unit. So staff does not recommend changing the comparable rental unit as a means for alternative compliance. Next, we also wanted to clarify that relocation assistance requirements related to governmental agencies ordered to vacate. So for a governmental agency's order to vacate, the state-mandated relocation assistance applies in addition to the city's temporary relocation payment. So we also wanted to add explicit language in the ordinance that clarifies that both the state and the local laws will apply. And next, we wanted to improve the consistency. So the amendments that we proposed modified timeframes, definitions, and administrative hearings to be consistent with other city processes, the RRSO, which, as you're familiar with, the Residential Rent Stabilization and Tenant Protection Ordinance, the state law, and the Hayward Municipal Code as applicable. So for example, for timeframes, we wanted to increase consistency by using calendar days. Right now, the ordinance kind of jumps back and forth between calendar days, business days, or just days. We also wanted to standardize the time for delivering appeal decisions and add additional time for translating decisions, as many of our tenants are Spanish speaking or speak a different language, so we do require some additional time to translate our decisions. We also wanted to add some more definitions, so adding an explicit cross-reference to define terms that are shared between the RRSO and the TREO. And then next, for the administrative hearings, we wanted to require a payment to conduct the appeal hearing and allowing for hardship exemptions, and then conducting an assessment hearing by request only. So just to summarize the amendments, really the major amendments that we're making, the first, as I mentioned before, it's modifying the temporary relocation payment from a multivariable per diem requirement to a one-time flat rate of 3 times the FMR. Adding explicit language that indicates that relocation assistance for an order to vacate requires relocation assistance required by state law in addition to the city's requirement. Improving consistency by using calendar days, standardizing timeframes, and maintaining alignment with state law. Cross-referencing defined terms shared by the RSO and the TREO. Adding a penalty fee of $1,000 for landlords who do not provide relocation assistance in a timely manner for cases relating to an order to vacate, as this was recommended by the HPRC. And then adding a fee for appeal hearings, except in cases of hardship, and modifying the assessment process to conduct hearings upon request consistent with these processes referenced in the Hayward Municipal Code. So finally, I just wanted to highlight the 4 recommendations that staff has outlined in the report. The first is holding a public hearing to obtain input on the proposed amendments to the TREO and associated amendment to the fiscal year 2025 master fee schedule. The next is introducing an ordinance amending Chapter 12, Article 2 of the HMC and clarifying and streamlining requirements for relocation assistance. The third is adopting a resolution that amends the master fee schedule approved in October. And finally, adopting a resolution appropriating about $30,000 in funds received from landlords to reimburse the city for our active relocation assistance cases. So with that, I'm here to answer any questions, and Christina Morales is also here online to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, appreciate that. So before I go to public comment, let's see if there's any clarifying questions from council. Councilmember Goldstein and then Councilmember Bonilla.
You mentioned that a landlord could potentially be subject to both state and local reimbursement fees. Can you help me understand what the actual impact might be to a landlord dollar-wise and what circumstances might actually trigger both of those?
Yeah, so state law, currently the health and safety code for state law, for California state law, requires that local jurisdictions apply relocation assistance if a local enforcement agency provides an order to vacate. So that's described in the health and safety code, and it's about 2 times the fair market rent plus a utility allowance. So that's required by state law for local jurisdictions to apply. And then in addition to that, it's really the city is going to apply the relocation assistance that we have determined based on an order to vacate. So I also wanted to clarify that the state law portion will only apply for an order to vacate situation. And then I think you discussed the impacts. So it's really going to vary per landlord. So if some landlords may be more readily accessible to provide that payment to the tenant, others may not, but that's really gonna vary from one landlord to another. So it might be a little bit difficult to really apply that generally or broadly.
Okay, so if a landlord's not able, they don't have the financial means or they're unwilling to make the payment, does that mean that the city makes that payment to the resident and then we collect that back from the landlord at some future time?
That is correct.
All right, very good. And if, when we collect those funds and disperse those funds, are there any strings attached to it? I mean, are we covering actual expenses, or are we just saying that's per diem, do with it what you want? So if they go live in a trailer somewhere and it costs them $1,000, they can pocket $4,800?
So in regards to in regards to covering expenses, so one of the things that the current trail does not allow is recovering some of the staff expenses, which is why we decided, as one of the HPRC members, advocated for including a penalty fee, and that would kind of incentivize landlords to make the payment on time. And I think, Christina, did you have any other input on that?
Yeah, so I think if I'm just understanding the question, if it is a reimbursable expense that we're expecting to see receipts from the tenant, and the answer is we are not. So it is an estimate of what it would cost to be able to cover first and last month rent and your relocation costs being displaced in an emergency situation where you're not given much time. The city finds a unit uninhabitable, something that shouldn't be a rental unit under state law because it's not habitable, trying to help the tenants get a soft landing in any means that they are able to do that. So it is a homelessness prevention strategy so that we give means to individuals that have been impacted for no fault of their own by having rented housing that was not suited for human habitation.
Okay, that sounds perfectly justifiable. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Bonilla.
Thank you, Mayor. Regarding the recommendations, recommendation 4, where it's essentially appropriating about $30,000 in revenue for reimbursing the city for relocation assistance cases. What exactly is that last part, the city relocation assistance? Is that like staff time, or is that actual money that we put out that we're now trying to get back?
That is the money that we put out. So it was previously money we got from ARPA, and then that money we basically, when the landlord did not make the payment for an order to vacate situation, the city decided, okay, we will go ahead and we'll pay the tenant, and now we will pursue reimbursement from the landlord for the funds we use to pay the tenant. So that reimbursement money is really what this $30,000 is addressing.
Thank you. And then does that $30,000 go into like some revolving account that could then be used in a situation like you just described where a landlord?
So this $30,000, it's real. My understanding is that, this revenue fund in particular, my understanding is that once we get it, we need to request permission to reuse it for purposes like revolving relocation assistance fund.
Oh, got it. I mean, that would make most logical sense to where it should go, is to kind of a revolving relocation assistance fund. So that's what I would advocate for. But great presentation, and thanks for addressing my question. That's all I have.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. When I remember when I was on the Planning Commission, this came up for some development that was going to be happening. And the issue was an issue of notice to tenants. And is that part of, we didn't talk about it in the presentation, but who is responsible for noticing the tenant? Is that a city thing for them to know their rights, or the landlord thing? And how can we sort of ensure, the most possible notice for tenants and what's happening?
So the landlord is required by the RSO to actually provide notice, both the RSO and the TREO, to provide notice to tenants of their rights, and that includes the requirements for the tenant relocation assistance ordinance. Christina, did you have any other thoughts on that?
I think the only thing to add, so in cases where it is a code enforcement notice to vacate, where the city is involved in the need to displace the tenant and the city's made that determination, we do notify the tenants of their rights under the tenant relocation assistance ordinance. In those cases, we take the ordinance is more proactive for the city to actually be involved with the notification. In cases where it is a residential rehab or no fault eviction, it is required under the ordinance that the landlord notify the tenant when they lease a unit, or 30 days after the enactment of the ordinance. So there are those notification requirements built into the ordinance.
Thank you. And then, and with that, so say everybody's noticed, but the landlord still isn't paying, what is the grievance process? Is that part of the notice to say who you're you're supposed to, contact?
Sorry, what did you say about the process? What's the?
Yes, what is the grievance process, if a landlord is not paying?
Yeah, so if a landlord is not paying, so what happens is for an order to vacate, we will issue a determination letter, and that is really addressed to the property owner, and then that we also inform the tenants that this is required for the landlord. So if the landlord does not make payment and we're informed by the tenant that the landlord does not make the payment, then we go about our process of issuing a notice of failure to pay and so forth, and making sure that the landlord is going to comply.
Okay, and that's why the sort of potential adding a penalty fee on this in order to collect that staff time back. Okay.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
And also, I'd like to add that in addition, the landlord has to submit proof of payment to the city 30 days after they are required to pay. So we do have that stopgap measure in the event that the tenant doesn't file a complaint. If we don't receive that proof of payment in cases of notice to vacate issued by the city, we can also intervene if we haven't received the required documents.
All right, that's helpful. So if a tenant doesn't know or have the wherewithal to know they should have been being paid, then the city is on top of it as well.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions from Councilmember Semenya. I apologize.
Thank you, Mayor. Just one quick question. How has our ordinance worked up to now?
So right now, could you clarify in what respects?
Have we had any problems with the ordinance? We've been able to help folks relocate. Have we had funds or have we not had funds?
So I think one of the biggest problems with the current ordinance, or one of the bigger issues that we encounter, is that explaining the payment structure is really where sometimes landlords struggle, sometimes staff struggle, sometimes there's a little bit of a back and forth of a misunderstanding between landlords of what applies and what doesn't apply. So I would say that's kind of one of the bigger issues that the current ordinance applies. Christina, did you have anything to add to that?
Yes, and definitely when we enacted the ordinance, we didn't have the emergency relocation assistance. And I think that was the first issue that we identified, is that without the city, having leverage to pay on behalf of the landlords to the tenants to expedite them finding alternative housing, it was more of a challenge to get the property owners to pay. With the ability to actually pay the relocation assistance, we're able to help people find safe and habitable housing sooner. And then I would say, in terms of whether the ordinance is working, well, I think it has its complexity, which we're proposing to improve by tonight's action. Where it is successful is the city's able to not only make sure that tenants are not having to tolerate uninhabitable conditions, but we're able to provide them with resources that they can find alternative housing. So that has been very successful. I think we've had more cases that were related to code enforcement than we had expected. But I think it's also given people the reassurance to be able to speak up when they are living in conditions that are not safe.
Okay, so it sounds just a little complex, but at least we've been able to help out the folks who really are in need, our renters. So thank you for the report. Good.
Thank you. So I'd like to now go to public comment. There is no public comment online, and I don't have any public comment cards on the chamber. So I like to close public comment,
Mayor,
return to council.
My apologies, Mayor Salinas. I believe Rose has her hand raised.
Oh, okay. Okay, so before I go back to council, Rose A.
Yes, I'm sorry that I didn't change my ID on this, but it's Ro Aguilar. And I want to commend the staff and the council for having this ordinance to help out people who might be in this difficult situation of substandard housing and having to relocate. And I wonder, with the resources that the city has there been any follow-up to find out if these folks are actually finding a place that they can stay in for a certain amount of time, or has there been difficulty in transferring people to other housing locations and they lose their housing for some reason or another, because it's more, or I mean, what is our batting score on getting these relocated folks into housing that is relatively permanent, and housing that they needed and want to stay there? And I'm wondering also if you've had any difficulty where you couldn't find housing that was affordable and would have to maybe put people in a hotel room, and they would pay, you know, a comparable amount from the hotel. I'm just really happy to hear about this prevention of homelessness measure. And I would like to know what if it is successful, that we're tracking it, and we know that these folks are in houses 6 months or 8 months, you know, not tracking it every month, but, you know, checking back in like 6 months and saying, are you still housed? And, you know, have you had any issues? Because moving to another housing location could raise issues that we're unaware of. So the hotel thing, and then the batting average.
Thank you. I don't see any more public comment. I'd like to close public comment, return to the council. And before I ask for a motion, you know, one, I just wanted to thank staff for staying on top of this. You know, I remember back in 2020 when we formed the Housing and Homelessness Task Force. I can't help but to channel my two former colleagues, then Council Member Aisha Wahab, now today State Senator Aisha Wahab, and of course then Council Member Sarah Lamnin, and now today Director Lamnin from the HARD Board. That, you know, when we were working with staff to put this thing together, the focus was to really support tenants, and I think the task force has been working over the last few years to really make sure that nobody in the city of Hayward has to unnecessarily suffer from you know, from some kind of a circumstance where they are made unhoused. And I think programs like this has been our attempt to make sure and to assure people remain housed, but particularly when a multi-unit family housing development is being, you know, under development, or when they're being renovated, or, you know, or so forth, we're able to step in and support families. I'd be remiss to not include today my two colleagues who served with me on the Homelessness and Housing Task Force, which is Councilmember George Syrup and Councilmember Dan Goldstein. And Dan Goldstein, of course, is also our designee to the Alameda County Housing Authority, and so he's been representing us there. Also, I want to thank staff. Ms. Morales, you have been with us from the very beginning of all this, and to see here we are 4 years later tweaking language to make sure we just get it done better and more efficient. And lastly, anytime Ro Aguilar calls and says that we're doing a great job, I'm going to quickly move for a motion so we can get this thing voted. Moved by Councilmember Goldstein.
I'll second.
Seconded by Councilmember Syrup. And Madam City Clerk, if there are no other questions, we can have a comment. Is there a comment? Councilmember Bonilla and then Councilmember Roach.
Thank you, Mayor. My comments will be brief, but thank you so much for bringing this back. As I think about relocation assistance and its importance in the housing crisis in the Bay Area, I'm just so happy that our city is taking these steps to streamline and make sure that the services that we're intending to provide are provided in the most efficient way possible. I think preventing homelessness is a strategic priority for all of us here on council, and I think tonight's recommendation really does center that priority in the ordinances that we're putting forward. I would like to see, a revolving relocation and assistance program. So as we think about kind of, that $30,000 being returned to the city, thinking about how we keep these type of programs alive. Protecting some of our most vulnerable residents and our renters, I think, is a priority for us. So whatever we can do to make sure that this is sustainable, I think is the right thing to do for our community. Ensuring that people have access to safe housing in Hayward and making sure that our tenants are living in suitable conditions, and when they're not, quickly helping them find better places to live is, I think a human right that everyone in the community deserves. So I'm really happy that, to support this motion tonight. I think that this is just one tool of many tools that we have in our, a growing toolbox to deal with our housing priorities here in the city. And anytime that we can remove complexity from our ordinances and help streamline our services only helps us serve our members even more. So thank you for all of the hard work that went into tonight's recommendation, and I'm happy to support this recommendation. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, and then thank you. And before I call on Councilmember Roach, I want to call upon Councilmember Syrup, who made the motion or did the seconder, and give him the privilege.
Thank you, Mayor. I also would like to thank staff for putting this forward, especially you, Deputy Director Morales, on the big screen back there. I think it's really exciting to see this because I think it's a great example of government getting out of its own way. We're seeing how rewriting language and policy can make the experience for a resident, whether they're a tenant or a landlord, or our staff who are responsible for implementing and enforcing a regulation, easier, more streamlined. This is a fiscally responsible thing to do. I think it's a moral thing to do. I appreciate the comment that this is a homelessness prevention strategy. I stand by the fact that one of the best ways we can prevent homelessness is by allowing people to remain housed, and I think this action goes a long way in helping us accomplish that more effectively. It's also exciting to knock out a strategic roadmap project a little bit ahead of time, so I'm happy to see us making progress on that goal as well, and before the end of the year as a nice holiday treat for the city. I do have a request that we make sure the website is updated swiftly if this ordinance is adopted in the coming months, just so that as we enter the new year, tenants and landlords are made aware of or can access and reference this new ordinance very quickly. And just wanted to express appreciation for incorporating the feedback that came from what the task force has evolved into, which is the Housing Policy and Resource Committee. And I'm appreciative of my colleagues up here for making that a permanent council committee. So yeah, thank you for offering me the privilege to jump into the comments, Mayor. I'm excited to help second this motion and put this plan into action, and for the benefit it'll give tenants across our city.
Thank you. Councilmember Roach.
Thank you. Yeah, I think my colleagues said most of it, but I just want to say, like I said, a few years ago, I was dealing with some of the planning commission, so I'm really glad to see we're now just tweaking language and clarifying this for the community. Especially, it sounds like we have triple modes of checking that the landlord's doing their part, the tenant knows, and then following up that the landlord's doing their part. I really appreciate that because I think most people are not aware when these difficult circumstances arise that there may be resources out there. So I'm really glad to hear that. And I really like the simplification on the one-time fee. I think everyone, as long as everyone knows what to expect so that the landlords know exactly how to comply, tenants know what to expect, should a difficult circumstances arise. So, and I appreciate the explicit language so people know that this is on top of a city, on top of a government orders relocation or to vacate order, because I think that's important, because I think that's an area where people could get kind of like, well, you're already getting it from the federal government, so we don't need it here. So appreciate that. And again, I'm fine with adding the penalty fees because I think, if we're doing all of these things to make everybody aware what they should be doing and it still doesn't happen, I think it's fair at that point to say, hey, you knew what to expect and this didn't happen. So thank you so much for the work, and I'm glad we've gotten this far. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Councilmember Andrews.
Thank you. Thank you for the report, and thank you for making these updates. And I just wanted to commend the task force for ensuring these changes are happening. I also think this relocation assistance is a good investment in our community, and also provides clarity for both the landlord and the tenant agree that this is really helpful in terms of preventing homelessness. So just wanted to make sure that we have this ordinance in a way that's digestible in multiple languages, just to make sure that all people in our community understands that this assistance is available to them. And just want to, again, thank staff for making this really a simple, digestible presentation for us, because I know this stuff can be pretty complicated for the community. I think you all presented it very well tonight. Also, just want to say, again, regarding the investment in our community, this is a way for us to retain our residents, retain our students, retain our families, and also contribute to the community. So thank you again for bringing this forward.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I just, before I forget, I wanted to echo Councilmember Bonilla's request for some kind of revolving fund. How do we sustainably run a program that can help support folks when the landlord doesn't step in, just so that this is an effective program when not everybody complies? And then the second part was just wanting to mention Ro Aguilar's comment around metrics on effectiveness. I know that's not part of this necessarily, but I do think if we're trying to be a data-driven city and a metrics-driven city, it would be interesting to know with this assistance, what is our follow through? And I recognize it's a whole other load of work that some staff might have to take on. So maybe keeping an eye to how we could design this program or a process in a way by which if we were able to, let's say, reallocate staff in that direction, we'd be able to follow up and understand the impact we're having with this ordinance. So we're not just passing rules without understanding if they're working or not. Thank you.
Councilmember Cermeño.
All the good amendments, I'm glad that you went through them. I received quite a few emails. Francisco, what are you doing about the homeless out in the streets and the encampments? Well, this is one instrument that we have. This is one possible way of preventing a homeless situation. So it can be added to our 7 points that we have already. So I think it's tremendous. So good job, and this is for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate that. And if there are no other comments or questions, Madam City Clerk, I believe we can take a verbal vote.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Councilmember Andrews? Aye. Councilmember Bonilla Jr.?
Yes.
Councilmember Goldstein?
Yes.
Councilmember Roach?
Yes.
Councilmember Syrup?
Yes.
Councilmember Cermeño? Mayor Salinas?
Yes, and it unanimously passes. Thank you. Next, we're going to go to our council reports and announcements. And are there any council reports or announcements? Councilmember Andrews, yes.
Yes, I have 3. I don't think Light Up the Season was mentioned. Was it mentioned earlier? Okay, so Light Up the Season is this Saturday at City Hall from 4 to 8. So please come down to enjoy the festivities. I wanted to acknowledge that the Bay Philharmonic was at our Southland Mall and performed over the weekend. They'll be coming back with the youth orchestra on December 28th, so you can follow Southland Mall regarding that. But Bay Philharmonic is having 2 shows at Chabot for the holiday season for December 14th at 7:30 and December 15th at 3 p.m. And you can go to bayphil.org for more information. And the third event, backed by popular demand, is another K-pop event, you guys. No. So Councilmember Roach has joined the dark side, and we'll be hosting an event with Downtown Hayward Improvement Association, 82 All Night, and a host of other partners, including the Asian Museum, SF Asian Museum. We'll be holding a K-Wave pop-up event with a Squid Game theme, and it will be at Sector 19/Craft Pizzeria, and it will be December 15th through December 15th, and it will be from 12 to 8 p.m., so all day. And Mayor, it's something for kids to do. You know, you hear this? It's all ages, something for kids to do. So please stop by.
Even old kids?
All ages.
Good.
I had a short one.
Yes, Councilmember Syrup.
Thank you. I just wanted to give a shout out. This past Sunday, I believe, over the Thanksgiving weekend, Pearl, who runs Pearl's Cafe up in the Hayward Hills, organized a street cleanup that encompassed all the way from the Bronco Billy's Pizza Plaza all the way down to Carlos B, and we had I think it was about 12 folks show up to take care of this huge cleanup task, completely community organized, and Hayward Clean and Green's very own Tom Ferreira was part of it. He left the meeting. I wouldn't anticipate he'd stay this long to hear this, but I just wanted to shout him out. He brought his trademark donuts from World's Fair, and we had some coffee to kick us off, and we picked up, I think, between 8 to 12 massive bags of trash, and I just thought it was a great example of self-organization from the community. People were doing pickups on their own, and we thought, oh, what if we all just got together and did it on one day? So I think it sets a great example, and I'm hoping more neighborhoods can organize some cleanups of their own, independent of the Clean and Green Task Force. But of course, you can always invite the Clean and Green Task Force to join you.
You mean, am I hearing the Keep Hayward Clean and Green Task Force are going rogue?
It's a rogue task force.
Councilmember Andrews.
And a good reminder to adopt a block so you can have support from the city to do more cleanups. But please let Pearl know that I did request a trash can for her. So it's in the queue.
But I do. The Syrup family has adopted the whole corridor, right? Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, you just called them out. Well, good. Council members, Zermeño.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for our city manager and maybe some staff. Any funds to maybe put some traffic or some decorative Christmas holiday lights on a couple of blocks of Foothill?
We don't have funds identified at this point, but we can certainly look into it. I will work with our maintenance services department and see what we've got. And if we can't do it this year, we will certainly look into it for next year.
I think it'd be great. One way to perhaps slow traffic down a little bit and make it more lively.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you.
I thought I saw an email that there are lights on Foothill, and the DHIA has done it. See, I said it correctly this time, Director Bowser. The DHIA has put them up, and so they're up. And
No, that is true. So we have a bunch of holiday lights that are on all of the traffic signals. So they're up at the top on there. And then we've installed other lights like the similar cafe sort of string lights that are along B Street are also along some of the blocks on Foothill as well.
Yeah.
And so those will remain. The holiday lights on the others are temporary for the holiday, but the other main string lights at the pedestrian level on Foothill will remain.
Nice, thank you. See, just like that, we fixed it.
Great work, DHIA, and thank you, Director Bowser.
I just have one announcement. I wanted to invite everybody to City Hall next week. Tuesday, we have a special council meeting. We will be swearing in our returning council members. I wanted to congratulate Councilmember Ray Bonilla Jr., Councilmember Angela Andrews, Councilmember Dan Goldstein, and Councilmember Francisco Zermeño on their successful re-election. And they have served this city honorably for many years, and I'm very pleased to see that they're returning to the dais after January 1st, which is great. Next week, on Tuesday at 7 o'clock, the city clerk and her magical elves will be, they will have this place decorated, and we will have community. We will have, of course, the council members with their families will be here. We will be swearing them in, and we will be launching their next 4 years on the Hayward City Council. And I will be especially pleased and I will be especially proud to see Councilmember Andrews on Tuesday, because the last time this happened to her, it was online. And it just didn't have the same, Mr. City Attorney, I think it just didn't have the same vibe. I'm just saying. So I wanted to officially invite everybody to next week's council meeting. The city clerk's office always puts on a wonderful event. And something that we really do take pride in this city is ceremony. On occasion, sociologically speaking, on occasion, it's important that the community come together and have touch tones where we acknowledge the present, look forward to the future, and it's important that we do that for the community. So congratulations to all my colleagues on their success, and I will see you Tuesday at 7 p.m. with your family. Meeting adjourned.